Hey everybody, welcome to the channel, True Crime Stories. If you're new to the channel, please hit that like button and subscribe so you can hear more. Thanks for stopping by. This is the story of Greeley Bacon Hurley, age 30. He died from gunshot wounds on April the 5th, 2025 in Belfry, Kentucky. He had a physical altercation with a man named Paul David Coleman. This took place in a parking lot, and Coleman was later indicted for second-degree manslaughter in November of 2025. I actually had started doing a story about this man before the arrest and before the indictment of this man in November, because that was pretty recent. He was indicted for second-degree manslaughter, but I did find a story that was posted on change.org. On the afternoon of April the 5th, 2025, my life changed forever. My son, Brandon Bacon Hurley, a beloved father of 3, was tragically gunned down at a Belfry parking lot. Despite eyewitnesses, video, and clear evidence pointing to the shooting, Bacon was unarmed and he was shot twice. So even though Bacon Hurley was unarmed, the police want to use the term gunplay to describe this, and that would suggest to the public that both men had guns and both men were shooting at each other, even though we know that that wasn't the case. The Pike County authorities had shockingly informed me that there was no evidence to present his case to the grand jury. Pike County prosecutors have now been recused, and a new Commonwealth prosecutor was brought in. I was informed today on October 28th, 2025, that it has been postponed again and will be presented to the grand jury. This is not a miscarriage of justice. It's a devastating blow to our family and a jarring shock to our community. Brandon, fondly known as Bacon to his family and loved ones, was more than just a victim. He was a devoted father, a son, and a steadfast friend. His memory deserves justice, and his children deserve answers. We as a community cannot let this injustice slide. Nearly 7 months have passed since the fateful day when my son was shot. Yet Paul Coleman, the shooter, walked away uncharged. Our goal is to urge the Kentucky Commonwealth Attorney to reevaluate the evidence and move forward with this case. So this was a petition that the family of this young man had set up to try to get. And I'm continuing to search for more information. I started watching the one video on YouTube that I was able to find about him. He was shot April 5th, 2025 in a business parking lot in the Belfry, Kentucky area. Finding out details about what led up to this is the problem that I've been having. So the one little bit of information about this case that I was able to find was that there was a young woman named Kelly, and she was in the car with Bacon Hurley when this incident happened. And apparently she has a child with Paul Coleman, maybe, or if she had broken up with him. I don't know all the ins and outs of all this relationship and stuff, but I know that what I was told was that this woman was in the car with Bacon Hurley. Now, were the two of them involved in a relationship, and was this all over this Paul Coleman shot and killed Bacon Hurley over this Kelly? So apparently this Kelly had just had a baby with Paul Coleman when this happened. I don't know how old the child was at that time, but this man was significantly older. Bacon Hurley was 30 years old. I believe this Paul Coleman was in his 50s. To find information about him, and here is the part about all this that everybody has had the community and the family upset, is that they knew that he killed him. They knew that he was the shooter. So I think the thing that really had the community and the family and everybody the most upset about all this is that at the time that this happened and this Brandon Bacon Hurley was shot and died, and there were witnesses, and this Paul Coleman apparently, according to some people, was out bragging about it, was out telling people openly that he shot and killed this guy. And this Kelly, she told the police and other people that it was him that had done this, and they still did not arrest this man. This happened in April of 2025, and that he was indicted just probably in like November or December of 2025. So pretty recently. Was dated November 24th, 2025. This is from Appalachian News Express, a newspaper from Pikeville, Kentucky. A man indicted on manslaughter charges turns himself in and claims self-defense. November 24th, 2025. A man who was indicted on manslaughter charge by a Pike County grand jury on November 19th has turned himself in. Paul David Coleman, 58, of Bent Branch Road, was indicted for the shooting death of Greeley Brandon Bacon Hurley, 30. Paul Coleman voluntarily surrendered himself on November the 24th along with his attorney. He was booked into the Pike County Detention Center at 5 p.m. According to the indictment, Paul David Coleman committed second-degree manslaughter when he allegedly shot and killed Hurley on April the 5th. He made the decision to pull into the parking lot where Bacon Hurley was. He made the decision to pick up his weapon. He made the decision to open his car door and get out of his car and walk to where Bacon Hurley was. Or maybe they were fighting and then he went back to his car to retrieve a firearm. Or maybe he had it on a holster. I don't know the details, but he made a decision to reach in and pull the trigger. Not once, but twice. So second-degree manslaughter, what's he looking at, 10 years? If he even serves that much time? A statement from Kentucky State Police in April said the incident occurred in the parking lot of a business near the intersection of 119 and Kentucky 319 in Toller. The statement said Hurley and Coleman got into an argument which resulted in gunplay. That's another term that's ridiculous, in my opinion. Gunplay sounds like you're just out target shooting, or maybe paintball guns or something. This man retrieved a firearm and shot and fatally killed Bacon Hurley. So the way that they word stuff, you really got to pay attention to. It's very ridiculous. And if I was this man's family, I would be pretty upset about that too. Now, this Kelly, she made a Facebook post, and I couldn't read it all. It was such small print. I was trying to see it. It just says they lied to... They had to do interviews as I was a witness that is going to testify against Paul Coleman for murdering Bacon. They now have total pharmacy care, hidden footage, and dash cam footage from Paul Coleman's truck. All three of our cell phones and pretty much all the evidence to charge him with murder. Well, they didn't charge him with murder. It's been a year since I have plenty of proof. I was helping Bacon every step. We fought hard, and I don't deserve to lose the man that I love. I am traumatized and mentally messed up. She uses a different word, but I won't say it here because I don't want to get a flag. See you in court, you delusional, worthless. See you in court, you delusional weirdo. And it says that he shot him in cold blood using a pistol, and he beat this man in the back of the head. He shot him, and then he was beating him with the gun, I guess. Wait, and she goes on to, it's such a small print, it's hard to read. She just says that he's a pathetic person. You are pathetic. Wait till you see Paul's mugshot and how effed up he is. According to one story that I read and some information that I found from a video, this Paul Coleman had, after the fact, after Bacon Hurley had died, his family began to be harassed by Paul Coleman. Now, that was their charges. I don't know. But they claim that he would come sit in front of their house. There was a woman who apparently was helping the mom try to get justice for her son's death. And apparently he threatened that woman. I don't know who that was, or I couldn't find any more information about that. But they went to the Pike County Sheriff's Office to try to get an EPO, and they were denied. They were denied an EPO. They said they didn't have enough evidence to prove it. Some people were claiming that the Sheriff's Office and the Kentucky State Police were afraid of Paul Coleman, and this is why they let this go for so long before he was even indicted. Some people claim Paul Coleman was an informant. Others claim that he was and this is a quote from this story that I read that said, Paul Coleman has always been a punk. He has to carry a firearm everywhere he goes because he is so chicken. So these are just things that people were saying about this man, and that he was out telling people, yeah, I shot and killed this guy. And so he's now been indicted. He's been charged with second-degree manslaughter. A Pike County jury will eventually hear his case, if he doesn't take a plea deal, that is. So I want to give a shout out before I continue on with this to a YouTube channel called The Expendable. Now, this man did an in-depth dive into the murder of Brandon Bacon Hurley, and I listened to this video, and some of this stuff I do quote him as having, talked about. He tells about how this Paul Coleman bragged around town and told everybody he would get away with this because he was friends with, buddy with the judge, Robbie Wright. Now, Robbie Wright is a judge in Pike County, Kentucky, who does misdemeanor courts. He does pre-trial, like for felonies. He does stuff like traffic violations and stuff like that. He has been telling everybody that he knows Robbie Wright and that they're good friends and hang out together. According to Paul Coleman, this is someone who's been known to be somewhat of a bragging type of person. And this Kelly tells that Paul Coleman is a crack dealer. Now, these are her words. I'm just quoting this, what I have learned on the internet here. So some of you may remember that I did a video probably about a year ago about a young man who was murdered in Letcher County, Kentucky, named Michael Hogg. This happened at Streetside Bar and Grill, outside in the street after hours, after the bar, it was New Year's Eve or New Year's morning, and everyone had left, and this altercation took place between Michael Hogg and some other people in the streets there. So this man, 24-year-old Michael Hogg, was stabbed to death in Whitesburg, Kentucky on New Year's morning. And Robbie Wright defended one of the men accused of that murder. He was the lawyer for James Huffman. And so that was after this case happened, and these men were found guilty. They were sentenced to prison. Robbie Wright then ran for judge. Now, Robbie Wright, for anyone who lives in eastern Kentucky, his name is well known. He's been a defense lawyer and a lawyer in Pikeville, Kentucky for many years. And I think a lot of people, if you go back, if you interviewed people or talked to people on the street, or just, anybody who's had anything to do with Pikeville, Kentucky, Pike County courts, would know Robbie Wright's name. And in 2019, Robbie Wright received an official public reprimand. So the Kentucky Judicial Conduct Commission issued a public reprimand of Judge Robbie Wright in December of 2019. So apparently there were two separate cases that he was reprimanded over. One had something to do with a campaign, and the other had to do with a former client. So basically what this guy says it came down to was a plaintiff by the name of Gypsy Cantrell Ratliff, who is well known in eastern Kentucky as being associated with the Steelworkers Union, had filed a lawsuit, or there was a court case between her and someone named Gillespie. Now, a hearing was held without the defendant being present. Now, this is what they claim. This is what the reason he was reprimanded about, was that he held this hearing without the defendant being present, and he ruled in favor of the plaintiff, Gypsy Cantrell Ratliff, who it was found out was someone who had worked on his campaign when he was running for judge. And it was just seen as being underhanded, I guess is one way to put it, that he would rule in favor. He should have recused himself from that and said that due to the fact that Gypsy Cantrell Ratliff was someone who he was friends with and had worked with and knew well, that he shouldn't be presiding over that. But he did, and he was reprimanded for the outcome of that. Now, in the second case that he was reprimanded over, it says a state panel reprimanded him, the judge who presided over this woman's case, even though he called her a thief and a liar on Facebook. Judge Wright waived formal proceedings in the case and agreed to the reprimand according to the committee. Okay, now he had represented this woman named Angel Watson in 2 custodial interference cases in 2017. He then posted a video during his campaign calling her a thief and a liar. Watson was heavily involved in a campaign against him when he was running for judge. She spoke out against him quite a bit, and she said she was facing tickets for speeding and having an expired license. I get a little bit ahead of myself sometimes. She asked him to recuse himself when he was hearing the case. She asked him to recuse himself and requested an appointment of a special judge. Wright held a hearing in the case while the request was still pending. Wright said in an interview that he had received an opinion from the ethics committee about the issue. And the other one was with like I spoke earlier about Gypsy Cantrell Ratliff. It had something to do with, she had filed a charge, small claims, trying to get back a boat. And I'm not really sure what the details of that was. But this all came down to the fact that she was working on his campaign and helping him during that, and he made a decision in the case, and a lot of people saw that as unethical since she was his friend and someone that he knew quite well. Now, there's another story about Judge Wright, and I didn't come here to talk about him, but I just felt like that while I'm on the subject, I'll talk a little bit about this. This kind of goes back to the way the family of Bacon Hurley feels about how they don't know if they're going to get a fair trial. This goes back to 2000. Well, this was published very recently. The family of a West Virginia man charged with murder, vehicular homicide, and DUI is voicing concerns about the case as they await a new trial. In July of 2024, Chad Blackburn was arrested following a crash on US 119 that killed a woman and injured her passenger. Since then, he has been incarcerated in the Pike County Detention Center, held on a $1 million cash bond. Okay, I have to voice my own thoughts about this right real quick. Judge Eddie Coleman, the special judge who was appointed to preside over the Amber Spradlin case, very recently lowered the bond so low for MK McKinney that he was able to post this bond and get out of jail. Now, this was not an unintentional vehicular homicide. He brutally stabbed to death Amber Spradlin and killed her, murdered her. And yet he's out now. He's out of jail now because his bond was lowered so much that they were, and even after the judge had set the bond low enough, they said it wasn't low enough, so they went back in and asked for him to lower it even more, and he did. So a lot of people was very upset about that, and they saw that as playing favorites and making it easy for this guy to get out of jail. Now here's a case on the opposite spectrum of that. Pike County Detention Center is holding this man, Chad Blackburn, on a $1 million cash bond. His family says there are people who have done more violent crimes and have gotten a lesser bond, and they're probably speaking in part to MK McKinney. The family says that Chad Blackburn had never been in trouble before the crash and that it was a mistake, but there has been a lot of bias in this case, says his mother. Investigators with the Pikeville Police Department say Blackburn was under the influence of drugs during the crash. According to an arrest citation, he had bloodshot eyes and a white substance in the corners of his mouth. He says he admitted to smoking a marijuana THC vape pen. Blackburn was indicted on murder and several other charges in 2024. Now, he didn't pull out a gun and shoot someone and get a $250,000 bond. And he didn't brutally stab a woman to death and get, I can't remember what the amount was for MK McKinney, but it was low enough that his family was able to come up with it. This guy hit someone with his car while he was under the influence, and he claims of just THC vape. They claim it was other substances. I don't know what the toxicology or breathalyzer showed, but he was charged with murder. Now, he was indicted on these charges, and his family believes that the bond is excessive. Now, I'm going to get to the reason for all this just in a second. Okay, so now we get to the victim in this car crash. It was Linda Wright, who was a beloved community member and also the mother of Judge Robbie Wright. So a lot of people feel like that this guy's getting unfair treatment because the person that died in the car accident, and you know, if he was under the influence, then he deserves to be charged with vehicular manslaughter, whatever other charges they decide to bring against him. But they feel like the murder charge was added on because it was the mother of a judge. And they feel like this $1 million bond is something that is excessive because of that as well. And they don't think that he's going to get a fair trial in Pike County. The last status hearing, now they did bring in a special judge from Bath County, Kentucky, after Judge Eddie Coleman recused himself. Now, Eddie Coleman was the judge appointed over the Amber Spradlin and MK McKinney. The last status hearing, they refused to lower the bail, and the new judge is saying that if he has to hear the case, it's going to be November of 2026. So they're expecting that he's going to stay in jail until then. We're not in any way trying to take away from the pain of what the Wright family is going through or the loss of Linda Wright. We know that this is devastating to them, but we don't know that we're going to get a fair trial, she says. Prosecutors say the concerns are unwarranted and they believe Blackburn will receive a fair trial in Pike County. The Commonwealth is treating Mr. Blackburn as it would treat any other defendant, but that's not the case. You have to look at MK McKinney and compare it. You have to say, why hasn't this man's bond been lowered enough that his family can come up with the money to get him out of jail? So basically this video didn't start out to be about this judge or about the corruption accusations of corruption in the Pike County courts. And there's quite a bit. I could do an entire video separately about the judges and the connections and the people that each person supposedly knows and how they know each other and so forth. But what it all comes down to is that people feel like that Bacon Hurley's murderer, basically the man that shot and killed him, he's claiming it was self-defense, even though witnesses said that that's not the case. How will it play out in court? And this Bacon Hurley is deceased. He's been shot and killed, and his family wants justice. And all this stuff about judges and lawyers and friendships with well-known people with influence, all that aside, let's just say this Paul Coleman didn't know any of these people and wasn't accused of having connections with any of them. Would he be receiving harsher charges? Would he have been arrested much faster? Would the indictment have come much sooner? I found another article here. This is from the Appalachian News Express from Pikeville, Kentucky. The date, this was just very recent, December 18th, 2025. A Meadow resident charged with the shooting death of a stopover man is seeking to have his bond reduced. Jonah Stevens, the attorney representing Paul David Coleman, 58 of Bent Branch Road, appeared in Pike County Circuit Judge Eddie Coleman's courtroom on December 17th to argue the motion for bond reduction. A Pike County grand jury indicted Coleman on November the 19th for the shooting death of Greeley Brandon Bacon Hurley, 30, of Stopover. An indictment warrant was issued against him but was never executed because he voluntarily surrendered to police officials on November the 24th. He was booked into the Pike County Detention Center shortly before 5 p.m. on November the 24th. And as of this date, he currently remained in custody. He was under a $250,000 full cash bond. Coleman's voluntary surrender was one of the factors Stevens cited in asking for the bond reduction. The defendant believes the bond to be excessive. They're asking for this bond reduction because of the economic means and the allegations against him, which is a Class C felony. It is clear the defendant is not a flight risk, his attorney said. Prosecutor Tony Skeens, who was appointed to the case by the Attorney General, argued before the court that he is both a flight risk and a danger to the community. He has family in Florida, Skeens said. That evening, he was on his way to Florida when he made the decision to turn around and seek out a confrontation at 2 o'clock in the morning in a Little Caesars parking lot with Brandon Hurley. Skeens also said that Coleman's communications with Hurley's mother and other family members have been intimidating and indicates that he presents a danger to this family. Mr. Coleman's brazen act is by far and away the most brazen act I have seen in almost 30 years. This is a man who is under investigation for the murder of another man. Skeens said Coleman, shortly before his indictment, sent Brandon Hurley's mother graphic photographs of him and another witness engaging in sexual acts. He also alleged that Coleman aggressively confronted and insulted the family on social media platforms. The defendant is a risk to the community at large, Skeens said. Stevens made suggested proposals to Judge Coleman for the bond reduction ranging from $100,000 to 10% of the $250,000 surety bond. Skeens continued to seek the bond to remain at $250,000 full cash. Judge Coleman told the attorneys that he was not ready yet to make a decision, but he would take all the arguments into consideration. According to the indictment handed down on November the 19th, Paul David Coleman committed the offense of second-degree manslaughter when he allegedly shot and killed Hurley on April the 5th. The statement said Hurley and Coleman became embroiled in an argument which led to gunplay. Once again, I say gunplay. I don't like that term. This man pulled out a gun and shot and killed this other man. There was nothing playful about this. Now, I'm not sure. I'm going to look it up and see. But I'm not sure if Judge Coleman came back with a decision on that bond. December 18th was the most recent story that shows up here. I'm going to continue to look for that, and if I find that he has been released on a lower bond, or if he was even able to come up with the money to get out of jail, I'll come back and do a follow-up on that. But as of right now, I couldn't find anything. Just in the quick time that I spent looking for it, I'm sure there's something. I'll probably find something on a Facebook page. But as of right now, I'm not really sure when his trial is set, or if he's planning to do a plea deal of some kind. Like I say, I will come back and do a follow-up. I do have some stories that I'm planning to work on, and some updates on the Jaden Spicer case out of Breathitt County, Amber Spradlin once again out of Floyd County, and a couple of other follow-ups to some stories that I've done. And like I said in the previous video that I did about the CEDU school, there are two stories that were related to that it would have just taken too long to cover them in that video. I am planning on working on those, and watch for that follow-up as well. As it plays out in court, when it comes to court finally, I will follow it, and I will come back and do an update on it, whatever the outcome of this might be. Thanks for watching.